you think that's damaging, in order to finance the new health care legislation, it will cost another 20%. And so if you're in a 25% bracket and you pay 5 to the state, and you add 20 and 20, you get 40 plus 30, and you're in for 70% plus Social Security and your real estate taxes and other state excise or sales taxes. So you're in for 75% of your income. And that's deliberate.
Well, it'd almost be cheaper just to quit and go on welfare. The only trouble is they're going to cut off welfare, too.
That's right. I have a letter going into the next issue from a businessman who owns a company. And a very solvent, very successful company. And his bank called him and said, we're cutting off your line of credit. And he said, well, gee, I can't understand that. Work with you for years and years, and now you want to do that. And they said, well, we have to do this, that, and the other thing. So that was the end of it. And he went on to a larger bank in the Midwest. And he talked to the banker, and the banker said, sure, we'll give you a line. You know, you got a wonderful business, and I don't even really think you need the money. But anyway, he got the line, but they got to talking. And the banker says that hundreds of banks are going under. And secretly, they're being absorbed by other banks. There's no notification in any part of the media on this. And the funds that are being used to do that are the TARP funds. And that's what really they were all about. And the banker expects, I think it was 500 to 1,000 banks over the next year will be swallowed up.
Well, I think they're up to 52 or 57 banks so far this year.
Yeah, well, that's what they report.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the whole financial structure of the United States is under attack. It is not happening by accident. It's happening by intent. Because, of course, when you have a system built upon a fiat money system, it's very, very profitable for a time. But it's, of course, as Margaret Thatcher said so well, the trouble with socialism, eventually you run out of spending other people's money to spend. And that's where we are today. And, of course, now they're just creating money out of nothing. And eventually we end up, of course, as Venice did and Florence did and so many other times throughout history when they've tried these systems and they just don't work. Well, this is Dr. Stan, I guess. It's Bob Chapman from the International Forecaster. And Bob is saying he really feels that the people on the other side are very concerned because people are beginning to wake up. People are beginning to realize that the Federal Reserve is a private-owned bank owned by these major banks in this country. Nobody's ever audited. We've never had a private audit of it. Certainly they audit themselves and say, see, there's nothing to worry about. We audited ourselves and we're clean as the driven snow. And that's sort of like Mr. Madoff. Bernie Madoff auditing his own company. And, this $65 billion Ponzi scheme he had. But the audit showed everything was right. And right now, of course, Madoff is a piker next to the Fed. The Fed has given away $2 trillion. $2 trillion that you and I are responsible for. They won't even tell Congress where the money's gone because they don't have to. They're a private bank. But they're concerned because, of course, there's talk about an audit. In fact, they've even hired a Federal Reserve System to tell everybody how wonderful they are. And you can trust the big bankers. After all, they would never betray the American people. They're men of integrity and honor. Just keep giving them more and more of a taxpayer's dollars as we did when we got Mr. Henry Paulson, who used to be CEO of Goldman Sachs, who appointed Mr. Liddy, who is to be head of AIG. Mr. Liddy was affiliated with Goldman Sachs and held their stock. Mr. Liddy gave Goldman Sachs $12.5 billion, didn't even try to negotiate it down because of a derivative deal. I mean, people might think there might be some incest there, some relationship, but, I mean, you have to be an awful paranoid individual and believe in a conspiracy to believe that Henry Paulson, who made almost $750 million as CEO of Goldman Sachs and gave that salary up to actually take a job as Secretary of the Treasury for $180,000 a year, that he might have had some ulterior purposes when he resigned as CEO of Goldman Sachs, making $35 to $45 million a year for $185,000 a year salary. But then, of course, some people are a little, they believe in a conspiracy. Well, right now, Bob, before I go on, I want you to give our telephone number. I want you to give our website, and I certainly I want you, and then I want to you tell people how they can get copies of the International Forecaster, and we will take calls. I think we have somebody already calling, but if you'd like to talk to Bob, our number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, or 464-8295. But Bob, before we get to our callers, I want you to tell our listeners how they can subscribe to the International Forecaster. And I will tell our listeners out there, I get this on Saturday and again on Wednesday. I always look forward to it. I read it through all 35 pages. I may skip a few pages at the end on health issues, but even that is very, very interesting. But I have so many other things to do, but I read that through word for word. Fascinating material you'll never find elsewhere. And, of course, Bob's views are very close to mine. Bob, tell people how they can get in touch with you and get the Forecaster.
The Forecast is about business, finance, economics, social and political issues all over the world. We publish, as you said, on Wednesdays and Saturdays by email. Runs around 35 to 40 pages. And we have a hard copy that goes out twice a month, and that's for people who are not on the Internet. If you'd like to get a free introductory copy, there's one of three sources you can go to. The site, theinternationalforecaster.com. The International, FORECASTER.com. You can email us, and that address is BOB, that's Bob, at INTFORECASTER.com, Bob at intforecaster.com. Or you can call toll free, 800-375-4188. That's 800-375-4188.
All right, fine. Well, let's go to George calling from Toronto. And, of course, our telephone number, 1-888-24-LIBERTY. 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. Hi, George. How you doing?
Great, Dr. Stan. God bless you and Bob. Bob, can you tell me, is reserve banking necessary?
No. Under the Constitution, it says that the monetary policy of the United States will be handled by the Treasury Department. And in 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was passed, and it was taken away from the Treasury Department and given to a group of private bankers.
Because it just seems like that's part of the big mess that's created all this.
You're absolutely right. The thing is that originally, of course, monetary policy, the federal government would coin money, and of course it was based upon gold and silver. That would be put into banks, and then in the various banks, state banks, why, of course, they would then issue a script of some sort. But, it's much harder, of course, to bribe the Treasury Department in 50 different states, the banking authorities in 50 different states, than simply to control this all from the national level. That's what it was all about. It's much harder, of course, to bribe, the representatives in 50 states than to bribe the Congress, in Washington, D.C. I mean, they literally give these people hundreds of millions of dollars in campaign contributions. Do you honestly believe that congressmen are going to do what's right for the people who are paying the bills?
Can I ask Bob one other question?
You certainly can. Go ahead.
Bob, a couple of years ago, you had mentioned that Peter Monk, the head of Barrick Gold, was shorting the gold market. That seems counterintuitive. Why would he do that?
He's a member of the Illuminati.
Was he getting paid off to do that?
Of course.
Okay.
In fact, it's my suspicion the seed money for his original company, which was Barrick Oil, if I remember correctly, in the late 70s, became Barrick Gold later. And he would go and buy up producing properties, and then he would sell the gold into the market that was going to be produced from those properties, and he would pay the loan back later in the form of gold. And the intention was to suppress the price, and that was being done deliberately at the behest of the people who control him, the royal family in particular, along with the other U.S. aluminists. And if you look at their board of directors going back for years,